November 2015. A reclining nude hangs at a Christie's auction. It is a Modigliani, one of the most coveted nudes in art. The room is silent. Paddles rise in slow, careful motions. The bidding climbs past numbers most banks rarely see. Past 10 million, past 50, past 100. The hammer falls at $170 million. More precisely, $170.4 million. The buyer does not wire the money. He does not hand over a suitcase or a bank draft. He pulls out a credit card. Collector Lou Ichian paid with an American Express Centurion card. The Centurion is better known as the Black Card. One swipe, $170 million. A single piece of metal carried the price of a masterpiece. He reportedly earned roughly 170 million reward points. 1 point for nearly every dollar of the painting. Enough points to fund a lifetime of first-class travel. It is the most famous swipe in history. Now here is the strange part about that card. That card cannot be applied for. There is no form, no website, no button to click. It is invitation only by Amex on Amex's terms. Reserved for its biggest spenders. No preset spending limit. No preset limit is how it cleared a 170 million swipe. Here is the puzzle that follows. Billionaires can buy almost anything they want. Jets, islands, art, entire companies are within reach. Yet some quietly hope to be invited to one. Why beg for a piece of plastic? Why crave the one product money cannot directly buy? The answer is not money. It is trust. American Express does not really sell credit. Plenty of companies will lend a wealthy person money. It sells a promise you can hold in your hand. A promise that someone, somewhere, will say yes. To understand it, rewind more than a century. Back when moving money was genuinely dangerous. In the 1800s, money meant gold and paper. There were no cards, no wires, no instant transfers. Carry coins, and a thief could take everything. Carry a bank's letter, and a stranger might refuse it. A distant clerk had no way to know you were good for it. He had never seen your face or your bank's name. Travelers far from home were dangerously exposed. American Express began as an express delivery company. Think of it as a courier for a young, sprawling nation. It moved valuables across a fast-growing country. Gold, documents, parcels people could not afford to lose. Its whole business was guarding other people's property. Lose one shipment, and the reputation was gone. That made trust its core product from the start. In 1891, Amex introduced the traveler's check. It solved the problem with a clever trick. The idea was simple enough to explain in one breath. You signed the check once when you bought it. That single signature became the whole security system. No vault, no guard, just 2 lines of ink. To spend it, you countersigned in front of the clerk. The clerk matched both signatures on the spot. 2 marks from the same hand, side by side. If the 2 matched, the money was yours. A thief could steal the paper easily enough. But he could not forge your hand under pressure. Not with a clerk watching his every stroke. The security was not the paper. It was the person. Stolen checks were nearly worthless to the thief. Yet they stayed fully valuable to you. Lose them, and Amex could replace them. For the first time, money could travel safely. Amex became the trusted partner of wealthy travelers. Its name, on paper, was now worth more than the paper. Then, in 1914, war broke out in Europe. Overnight, the old rules of money stopped working. Markets froze. Banks panicked overnight. European banks suddenly refused American letters of credit. They stopped honoring American checks as well. Paper that meant wealth yesterday meant nothing today. Roughly 150,000 Americans were stranded abroad. Many were tourists, students, and traveling millionaires. They held checks and letters no one would cash. Wealthy yesterday, penniless in a foreign city today. No money meant no food, no lodging, no passage home. And a war was closing in around them. Then they walked into an American Express office. Amex kept its European offices open. While others bolted their doors, Amex stayed lit. It cashed its own checks without hesitation. It even honored other banks' letters of credit. Paper its rivals had abandoned, Amex chose to accept. It was not legally obligated to do any of this. It chose the costly path because its word demanded it. Those travelers went home and told the story. Every retelling sharpened a single, simple idea. When everyone else said no, Amex said yes. That was not a marketing campaign. You cannot buy that kind of loyalty with an ad. It was a reputation forged in a crisis. For decades, trust traveled on paper checks. But the world wanted something faster. Post-war travelers spent freely and hated carrying cash. In 1958, Amex launched its charge card. A charge card is paid in full each month. The same promise, now pressed into plastic. The card business grew quickly through the early 60s. Merchants and members alike trusted the name. But a young empire is a fragile thing. One shock could undo a decade of goodwill. Then a scandal arrived that nearly destroyed it. It started, of all things, with salad oil. 1963. Meet Anthony Tino de Angelis. His firm, Allied Crude, traded in vegetable oil. Oil sat in giant tanks along the New Jersey shore. He borrowed against the oil sitting in his tanks. An Amex subsidiary certified how much oil he held. It issued warehouse receipts confirming the inventory. That certificate was as good as gold to lenders. But the tanks were mostly filled with seawater. A thin layer of oil floated on top. Dip a measuring stick in, and you only touched oil. The water below never showed on the stick. Inspectors saw oil and certified the whole tank. Oil floats on water. That was the entire trick. When inspectors moved on, the oil moved too. The same oil was pumped between tanks, counted again. Hidden pipes shuttled it from one tank to the next. One puddle of oil masqueraded as an ocean of it. He claimed roughly 900,000 tons of oil. About 55,000 tons actually existed. The gap between the two was pure invention. On that fake oil, he borrowed from dozens of lenders. Banks and brokers lent against oil that was not there. In November 1963, Allied collapsed. The fake inventory could not be hidden any longer. Losses across institutions ran into the hundreds of millions. And Amex's name was stamped on those warehouse receipts. Lawyers argued Amex was not truly liable. The subsidiary was structured to limit the damage. On paper, the company could have walked away. CEO Howard Clark felt morally bound to pay. The name on those receipts was the company's word. Walking away would have saved the money, not the name. Amex chose to make the claimants whole. The payout is commonly cited near $60 million. For the era, that was an enormous sum. Investors panicked. The stock fell more than half. Half the company's value evaporated in the storm. Many believed American Express might not survive. While the market fled, one investor leaned in. A young Warren Buffett asked a different question. Everyone else asked how big the losses were. Buffett asked whether customers still trusted the card. Was the scandal really about the brand itself? Or was just a wound that would heal? Buffett watched ordinary people at restaurants and shops. He looked past the headlines and into the tills. They kept reaching for their Amex cards. Merchants kept honoring them without a flinch. Customers still trusted the name completely. The salad oil meant nothing at the dinner table. The scandal had bruised the stock, not the promise. Buffett bought roughly a 5% stake. About $20 million, a huge share of his partnership. He was not buying oil or cards or buildings. He bet that trust would outlast the headlines. He saw an intact business priced like a ruined one. It became one of his most famous, profitable bets. Amex survived, and then it sharpened its identity. It would be the card for people who mattered. Gold card, 1966. Green card, 1969. Each tier was a different shade of belonging. Each tier sold belonging, not just borrowing. In 1984 came the Platinum card. It introduced a dedicated human concierge, a real person on call to solve your problems. In 1999 came the Centurion, the Black card. It sat above everything, invitation only. The latter now reached the very top of wealth. To see the genius, look under the hood. Every card hides a quiet machine of money. There are two ways to run a card network. One is open loop. One is closed loop. The difference explains everything about Amex. Visa and MasterCard run an open loop. Picture four players passing money around square. You, your bank, the merchant's bank. Your bank issues the card and lends the money. The network just connects banks and merchants. It takes a small toll, often around 2%. That toll is called interchange. The network never actually meets you. American Express runs a closed loop. Picture a tight triangle instead of a square. Just you, the merchant, and Amex. Amex issues the card and lends the money. It services you and deals with the merchant directly. No bank sits in the middle of the relationship. Because Amex owns the entire relationship, it sees everything. It knows the customer, the spending, the merchant. That full picture is the source of its power. So it can keep a promise to you directly. No middleman to blame, no one to hide behind. The same instinct that cashed checks in 1914. Amex charges merchants more on purpose, often 2.5 to 3.5%. Compare that to roughly 2% elsewhere. That is why some shops decline Amex. The fee feels too steep for thin-margin stores. But that extra fee funds something powerful. Those fees pay for rewards, lounges, and concierge service. Richer perks attract higher-spending cardholders. And those cardholders spend far more than average. Merchants accept the higher fee to capture those spenders. Turning away Amex means turning away big spenders. More spenders fund more perks. The loop reinforces itself. Every turn of the wheel makes the next turn easier. At the top tiers, you reach a human concierge. Restaurants, flights, the impossible last-minute request. A voice whose entire job is to say yes. And around this service, legends have grown. Treat the next stories as lore, not gospel. These are the stories that have become legend, repeated so often that they feel almost true. One member supposedly needed real Dead Sea sand. The concierge couriered it for a child's school project. Another wanted the exact horse from a 1990 film. Allegedly, that horse was tracked down and shipped. True or exaggerated, the legends do real work. They tell you no request is too strange. They promise a level of service beyond money. The myth itself is part of what you are buying. So what does this story actually teach? First, a brand is a promise, not a logo. A logo is just paint over the real thing. The promise is what survives a crisis. Amex sold safety in 1891. It sells the same promise to billionaires today. Second, trust is built in the hardest moments. Anyone keeps a promise when it costs nothing. The test comes when keeping hurts. Amex kept its word in 1914 and 1963. Both times it paid when it could have refused. Those costly choices defined it forever. Third, reputation compounds like interest. Small acts of trust stack up over decades. The $60 million payout looked like a disaster. It became the foundation of an empire of trust. The most expensive apology became the most valuable investment. Return now to that auction room in 2015. A painting, a black card, one swipe. That swipe was not really about the credit. Behind it sat a century of kept promises. From a courier's wagon to a billionaire's card. That, not the credit, is what billionaires pay for. This is history and education, not financial advice. Build your own promises and keep them when it hurts. Reputation is the slowest fortune to build, the fastest to lose. This was Chronicle, the story behind the money.